For our first flipped classroom experience, we will be looking at the law of demand and the law of supply. Guys, these concepts are critical. There is no way you can get through microeconomics if you don't have a firm foundation in these concepts. So it starts out easy, but it gradually builds and gets a little bit harder to put the whole picture together. So let's get started. First, we are going to look at demand. Now, most of the time we think, oh, if I'm willing to buy something, I create demand. And yes, that's part of the picture. What I'm going to do here is give you the textbook definition, and then we're going to break it down. First of all, demand, according to your textbook, is the desire to own something and the ability to pay for it. So I might desire a villa in the Virgin Islands, but if I don't have the ability to pay for it, then I'm not really creating demand. Now, to me, when I think about demand in terms of economics, I think about the fact that demand is going to reflect the willingness of the consumer to purchase something, but that we're also looking at this at an array of price levels. And we're going to take this concept here and actually model it using a scenario. Okay. Okay, moving on through. So let's take a scenario where the senior class decides to sell thank you grams for a senior class fundraiser in November. This would be where you have to make a card and tape a piece of candy to it and say thank you to someone for something they have done for you. So we poll some people around the school, and at 25 cents, we find that 100 people would be willing to purchase and would be willing to purchase a thank you gram. At 50 cents, we find that 80 people would be willing to purchase a thank you gram. At 75 cents, 60 people would be willing to purchase a thank you gram. At $1, 40 people would be willing to purchase, and at $1.25, we only found 20 people out of our little test group that would be willing to purchase a thank you gram. Well, what this is that we have created here is a demand schedule. This is a demand schedule. It is simply a table here that lays out specific prices and specific quantity demanded. Now, I want to talk about this term right here, quantity demanded. Quantity demanded, QD, does not equal demand. These are not the same things in economics, although by and large you do see them used interchangeably. Okay, let me put this back here. 60, 40, 20. When you hear them used interchangeably, it's people who don't exactly know what they're talking about. To make it a little bit clearer, quantity demanded is at each specific price. Okay, so that's a quantity demanded at this price. That is the quantity demanded at this price. That's the quantity demanded at 75 cents. That's the quantity demanded at $1. Okay, as you go through. The whole demand is this right here. It's our willingness to purchase at an array of price levels. It's the whole picture. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use this demand schedule to create a model. And economists love to create graphs and models to look at to help explain their concepts. So supply and demand models are obviously one of the most important in the discipline. Okay, so you start out by drawing an X and a Y axis. Always in economics, the y-axis is labeled price. Always. And once you get used to it, you can label it P. But start out by labeling it price so you know what we're talking about. The x-axis is always labeled quantity. Okay? So I'm going to take my data now and put it on these axes. So quantity, I have 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Okay. And we have 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1, and $1.25. Okay, so and what we're going to use is this data here to plot the relationship, the correlation between these points. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take my scenario A. On scenario A here, At 25 cents, we could sell 100. So I'm going to put a point there, and I'm going to label that A for scenario A. Okay, at 50 cents, we could sell 80. Okay, so there's my scenario B. At 50 cents, we sell 80 thank you grams. Okay, now at 75 cents, we can sell 60. Therefore, that's scenario C. Okay, at $1, we will sell 40. And at $1.25, we'll be able to sell 20. Okay, so we have each of these points plotted. But what we're going to do is now connect these points. And by connecting these points, it's going to give us a picture not only of these individual points, but all the possibilities in between. So here I'm connecting it, and that's not perfect, but we would normally connect it. And I'm going to label it D, because that's part of the convention. You always are going to label your demand curve with a D. So what we have created here, again, this is our demand curve, which shows not only these individual quantity demanded, but the whole collection of them. So that is our demand model. Now, what I want you to notice is the shape of this demand curve. The demand curve, as you can see, is downward sloping, right? And that is going to lead us to our law of demand. The law of demand states, ceteris paribus. Now you might say, what in the world is that? Ceteris paribus is simply a Latin term that means holding everything else constant. Meaning there are no other changes in the world. There's only one thing that's changing. And in our case, the change is going to be price. Okay? As price goes up, quantity demanded is going to go down. And as price goes down, quantity demanded is going to go up. That right there, this whole collection, is your law of demand. Now, don't just try to memorize it. Make sure that you understand it. Meaning, as price goes up, we tend to buy fewer of an item, right? Don't you do that? I know I do. Okay, as price goes up, I tend to buy less. But as price goes down and it goes on sale, I'm probably going to buy a little bit more. We do it all the time, especially in the grocery store when something we buy regularly goes on sale. If it goes on sale, we might buy 2 boxes or 3 boxes instead of just one. Now, what we see here is that the demand curve, when we create the demand curve, it has an inverse relationship, okay, which helps to explain the downward sloping nature of that demand curve. Let me just pull that up there for you just for a second. Well, it's supposed to come up. Never mind. Okay. Oh, it's because I'm in writing mode. Okay. It shows the downward sloping nature of the demand curve. Nope, that's supply. Hang on. Okay. Here we go. Nope, still not. Never mind. Just learning this. Okay. Exit drawing. Okay. So now that we know what the demand curve says and the law of demand says, what we need to do is to look at supply. To show you the textbook definition again, the textbook simply says that it is the amount of goods available in a market. Now, I like to think about it a little bit differently. I think that that supply shows the willingness of producers, because keep in mind, producers are your suppliers, to supply a good or a service at an array of prices. Again, we're going to be looking at a whole list of prices and seeing how producers respond to that. So to think about this, let's just use the thank you gram example again. Let's say that I say, guys, I really need some help putting these thank you grams together. Now, if we're trying to decide if it is worth our time to even stay and do these thank you grams, We want to be able to make money off of it, right? That's the only reason why we would sell them. That's the reason people sell things, is to make money off of it. So if we see that we're able to sell these thank you grams for 25 cents a piece, we may only be willing to sit one afternoon and make about 20 of those because it's just not worth it. At 50 cents, though, we may decide that's worth a little bit more of our time. And so we may decide we'll make 40. At 75 cents, we may be willing to make about 60. At $1, we may be willing to make about 80 of them. And at $1.25, we may be willing to make up to 100 of them. Now, again, this is what we call a supply schedule. This is a supply schedule, a table that simply looks at a collection of prices and looks at the quantity demanded at each one. Keep in mind that quantity supplied is not the same thing as supply. They are not the same thing. Each individual point here, okay, each individual point here and here and here and here and here reflect quantity supplied. The whole collection, though, the whole array is your supply. Now let's take this and graph out this relationship. Okay, starting again with your X and your Y axis. Again, labeling the Y axis price always, and labeling the X axis quantity. Okay, you can put a Q there. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Putting the data on the axes now. And then the prices.
Okay, now we need the following students to please report to the blood drive: Andy Bowman, Scotty Cummings, Olin Ridgway, Stephanie Hodgins, Grace Carter, Savannah Lee, Justin Thompson, Mackenzie Brown, Courtney Farrell, Logan Burkhalter, Kimber Robertson, Brooke Janot, Lacey Tomlin, and Taylor Witcher. Please go to the blood drive.
Okay, so now you can see what I'm doing. I'm doing the same thing we did with the demand schedule, but I'm taking these individual quantity demanded. At point A, at 25 cents, we were willing to produce 20. At 50 cents, we were willing to produce 40. At 75 cents, we were willing to produce 60. Okay, at, let's find a color I haven't used. Okay, at $1, we were willing to produce 80. And at $1.25, we were willing to stay an afternoon, and produce up to 100. Now, again, let's take our pencil and connect all these points, and what we create is our standard supply curve. Supply curve here. And here's the one way I remember it. Supply. Supply always slopes up, okay? Whereas demand always slopes down, okay? Now, let's take this upward sloping supply curve. What you should see here is that as the price rises, so does the willingness to supply. Do you notice that? Okay, so what we'll do here is use that to derive the law of supply. And the law of supply says, ceteris paribus, again, that's that same phrase, holding everything else constant, as the price rises, quantity supplied is also going to rise. And as the price goes down, quantity supplied is also going to go down. Now, if you think about this, this makes perfect sense because we talk about profit is an incentive for producers. So if they see that they can sell an item for more, they are going to be willing to spend more of their time to produce it. Okay, that's the law of demand and law of supply. Be ready to come into class and work with it.